Thank you, and welcome again, all of you who joined us last time. And for those of you watching this as a tape, welcome. Whenever you are watching it, including those of you that it's the middle of the night, you can't sleep, and oh, well, I've got nothing else to do, I might as well watch this video. Welcome to you as well. And for those of you that did not join us the first time or have not seen that tape, don't worry, this will stand by itself, sort of, particularly since I'm going to begin by going back to the things I either didn't get to or I went over too quickly the first time. And I'll hope that that doesn't keep me from getting from the things from this time. But we'll soon see. I included the Dennis the Menace little cartoon as a starting point. As I mentioned to Michelle, I've been holding on to this thing for probably over 40 years. And as she mentioned, with over 45 years of experience, it just sort of means I'm old and I've been around for a really long time. But the Dennis the Menace cartoon, I wanted to start with just as a reminder for all of us that it's really, really important to know what our expectations are for our children with respect to their behavior, both pro and con. Can they actually do this thing we wish for them to do and would like them to do? And is it developmentally appropriate for them to expect them to be able to do this? And the same thing with the behavior that provokes and challenges and frustrates us is the child really reasonably able to organize themselves at this point? Or are they going to need a lot of sort of external assistance? And sometimes that means a little bit of time to calm, whether that's sitting in a corner as a quote timeout. Most of us who use what we call timeout, it's not truly a timeout in the kind of official behavioral application of that strategy. But it's a break. It's a break for us. It's a break for the child, a chance to gather themselves and a chance for us to also gather ourselves. Because I just want to, again, reiterate that in my mind, in the long run, the number one question that we ought to be asking when our child is melting down or just being outwardly defiant or whatever the fact might be is the question is, what's the next thing that I'm going to do that's going to maintain or enhance my relationship with this child? That they understand that I am their leader, that I am the disciplinarian worth following, that my lead will take them to good places and make good things happen for them. And absent that, you're going to stand in the corner for a while. And then again, as another just reminder, this is stuff I will recommend for parents that I would say, for example, to a teacher, unless this teacher really had an intimate relationship with this child, don't go there. Don't go to places that have a potentially punitive aspect to them because it's going to interfere with your relationship. Parents got a different thing going on there because of just the intimacy of that relationship and the longevity and all that kind of stuff. So moving to the next slide, which was included in the first one, there are a couple of things I just want to go over again as reminders. This whole business about knowing our triggers and knowing how we get hooked, and to again understand that that's a variable dynamic, that changes depending upon our energy, whether we got any sleep last night, whether we've had an argument with our partner, all those kinds of things make us more or less vulnerable to be able to deal with our children in a more calm and constructive manner, as opposed to just screaming at them because I said so, which we all do. I said that to my almost 4-year-old grandson yesterday when I had just one too many whys. Why? And because his mother has said, I'm tired of you asking me why, he now says, how come? How come? Nico, I don't want to answer why anymore. How come? Well, I just finally got to because I'm Papa and I said so. So we sometimes get there. I understand that. But do know what are the things that your child does or does not do that most send you. And understand when those are starting to set up that you may need a moment before you intervene, before you actually try to constructively intervene with your child. Thank you. Michelle's telling me how little time I have left. This listening and rephrasing, I use that for kids, whether they're verbal or not. I try to form what it is they're communicating through their behavior or through their language. And then I say things like, let me see if I've got this, or let me see if I understand. And then I change it just a little bit to try to get them sort of more toward a track that I would like them to be on. The next one I think is really critical. As I said before, in the world of behavior, they spend a lot of time talking about antecedents, and typically what they're talking about are circumstances that set the stage for a particular behavior to be exhibited. And I think you can spend your life chasing that to not good end. I would rather have an understanding of what are the circumstances, the interactions, the events that trigger emotional states for a child. And again, it'll be like us. This is a variable dynamic. Some days it will, some days it won't, but we have an idea of these kinds of circumstances yield delight. These yield frustration. These yield rage. You know, understanding those kinds of things and then being able to say to the child, instead of addressing their behavior right out of the gate, you address their feelings. You can say, I can see that you're mad. And sometimes that's all you have to say. And now this isn't relevant for children. This is an adult. But I'm not going to indict this guy as fully as maybe as I could or should. This guy was described as an internationally noted psychiatrist as being probably one of the most pathological sexual deviants that she had seen in her career. Also given to assaulting staff who would interfere or interrupt his tracking children and things like that. And he would assault them. He would come at them and boom, you know, off and running. And we introduced this thing which now segues into this next idea of shifting logical levels. Just as I said, you don't address the child's behavior first, which is the elephant in the room. You go for the emotion that's around it. And I ask people to track just 3 logical levels. Now, metacommunication experts will tell you there are 17 or 18 levels of communication going on between us at all times. And by the way, verbal is the least reliable. It's all the nonverbal stuff that's actually much, much more trustworthy and rich with information. I ask people to track behavior, thinking, and feeling. So, and I don't go where the child is coming from. So let me use a child who now is verbal and is saying, you know, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, you know, I guess I'll go eat worms. That child's speaking to you from an emotional place, and you don't address it by saying, well, no, they don't, I love you. Now you're in a power struggle over whose emotion or whose feelings are going to rule in the moment. You shift to, well, what was it that I did that made you think that? And now, boom, they have to shift out of I'm being mad into trying to describe while they're mad. Now you may wait for that window while their arousal comes down a little bit, but the idea of always shifting it away from where they're coming from and then coming back. So Jacob, for example, all we started to do with him is he would start flying across the room and we would jump up and say, oh my God, are you pissed off? And sometimes we would use more frank language than that sort of matched his language. And he would stop in the middle of the room and say, you're gall dang right I am, and I'm going to, and then he would describe all the things he's going to do because he's angry. And instead of saying, well, no, you're not, because now we're in a power struggle over behavior. If he says, you know, I'm going to go break the antenna off your car, and you say, well, I'm not going to let you, well, now we're in a power struggle. Can I stop him from doing that? Instead, we would get to this emotional piece of it and say, yeah, we get it and we understand all those things, but what do you think that's going to get you? And now we've shifted from emotion to thinking, and then we go to behavior and say, I was wondering if just a good walk right now might be a thing that's healthy for both of us. And boom, we have not had, we instituted this I'm losing track of it now, how many years ago, and we have not had an incident of him not only not assaulting anybody in the community, he's not assaulted a staff person now in over a dozen years. And we were averaging, I don't know, 15, 20 a month prior to just doing that. I can see you're angry. So keep that in the back of your mind of going at your child and saying, yeah, I get it. You're upset. And then kind of the message is, and that's all right to be upset. It's just not all right to do this and this and this and this. So let's figure out another way for you to be upset. And then you start teaching them upsetness, and you model upsetness. Things like, oh, wait. I got to take a moment here, or I'm going to say or do something that I regret as a parent. And you give yourself a little time out. And you teach them, that's okay. You don't have to stay there nose to nose, toe to toe, and battle this out. You can take a break for a second. Anyway, all right. So redirecting, that's just call something else to the child's attention. Acknowledge that you're in control and that it sucks and you don't like being told what to do, and you understand they don't like being told what to do, but too bad. I'm Papa and I said so. This is where you assert that in a reasonable and responsible way. But then you give some control back to the child and you give them choices. Sometimes the choice would be something like, well, you can eat your dinner or you cannot eat your dinner. What you're serving, isn't it nice to have a choice? You can be hungry or not. That's your choice. No, it's not your choice to us preparing you a second meal because you don't happen to like what we're preparing for you. But choices are good, aren't they? Anyway, some support, some problem solving. This is the how can we be angry in a different way. Let me help you do that. Let's play with this. Let's role play. Let's practice. Let's make it silly and fun. But if it persists, then you do need to predict what's going to happen. If we go this way, we're going to Dairy Queen. If we go that way, you know, you're going to time out, you know, or I was thinking about this. Don't send them to their room unless their room is really someplace they don't want to spend a whole lot of time in. I can remember, here's the conversation. Christopher, go to your room. Do I have to stay there until you come out? Yes. Can Kim or Diane or CJ or Susie come in? No, they can't. Oh, great. I've got my room to myself and Kim can't come in and I can play with his stuff and nobody can stop me. I thought that was great. That was no punishment. That was no consequence. Anyway, all right. Sometimes simply removing the child from the setting, just picking them up and moving. And yes, I have taken children out of a store with a grocery cart full of groceries in the checkout line where I'm simply saying, I'm sorry, I thought we could motor and weather through this, but we're not. Give me 10 minutes before you start to restock this. I may be able to simply leave for a few minutes and come back and actually check this out and pay you. Not always. There were times that, no, we went home. That was the removal from the setting that we had to have. Make sure you circle back to the child and don't pretend like the incident is over for either one of you, because you know it's not, either for you or for them at times. It's just simply not. So go back and this is a time when I go back and I reconstruct and kind of do a post-mortem of, well, then I did this and you did that and you said this and I said that, and let's see, how could we have done that differently? Here's what I think I'll do differently next time. And then you give them something you're gonna do a little bit different. Remember, your child's behavior doesn't change until you change what you're doing to and with and for your child, all that kind of stuff. All right. So the next one, in the meantime, this came from, I probably better shorten this story up. I spent a day, and Michelle, by the way, I went back to look for my notes. I don't think this is a HIPAA violation because this was so many years ago and you don't know what state it was in or anything like that. But I got this kid's name wrong. His name is actually Blade Rumor, not Rumor Scout. It's Blade Rumor, which is the most, I don't know, like perfect name I've run across in my career. There's just something about that name. I think this guy should be a NFL wide receiver, but he was not. He was a child with really pervasive autism. What I didn't know spending the day with him is that he was part of an Amish community who sent their kids to the public schools who had not been inoculated. So it was one of the most wonderful days in my career, in that as I moved in to engage with him and then backed out when he got anxious, and then moved in and made demands or had instructional expectations, and I was trying to figure out a lot of stuff about him, where he was cognitively and motorically, and could he follow multiple step directions, all kinds of little things that I was trying to learn about him in the course of the day. and I would kind of, kind of come in and come out. And at one point during the day, he started just putting his forehead against mine. Which I liked. It was affectionate to me. I don't know if it was for him, but he did that. So at one point and this child was not verbal. It was about probably 13 or 14-year-old, adolescent. At one point at the end of the day, when he had leaned his forehead in and touched my forehead, I just simply said, "Blade, I know you're in there." And he said, "Yes." And that was the first time the people in school had ever heard him speak. He was not only nonverbal, he was not very, he didn't make many sounds. He had some clicking noises he made in the back of his throat. He had a kind of a high-pitched whining, siren-y kind of thing that he would do. And then when he was at a particular point of arousal, and I never knew what it was he upset? Was he really excited? He would just kind of make this howling sound. But anyway, so he says this word "yes," and I'm thinking, that's why I do this, because I get this moment that I'll never forget. And then I go home, and a few days later I start coughing, and it turns out that I get whooping cough from this child. And I spend about a month down in the basement of my home on my hands and knees, barking like a dog, and I broke a couple of ribs. So that's how hard you cough with whooping cough. But I had been a part of a thing. A woman who first hired me into the field and I were contracted to do a bunch of focus groups around the single question of what constitutes quality services. So we met with parents and guardians, and we met with direct support professionals, and we met with case managers and bureaucrats, and we met with individuals getting services and all kinds of things. And we kept them sort of separate. And met with them as groups. And so we had generated, I don't know, 300 or 400 sheets of newsprint with notes. As people talked, we kept track of it. And the question that I really had in my mind is, quality services are simply services that work. And what does that mean, that they work? Well, and for my world and my interest, for people with co-occurring issues and pretty dramatic behavior, is what helps them. What helps them feel better about themselves and about you and about the world, and what actually in the long run gets at their behavior. And so I put all this paper everywhere in my basement, and I spent a month, on my hands and knees on my back, just contemplating it and trying to see what emerged out of it. And this is what emerged out of it. This is the stuff that particularly the direct support professionals say, "I'm really good at this, and this is what I do." And the direct, people getting services directly is, "This is what really worked for me. All your other plans, they're all really fine. Y'all ought to have a really well-written plan that you ignore. And I have a really well-written plan that I wish you would ignore, because here's the stuff that really works." And the first one seems so simple, is that you just spend time. And it's not you're necessarily doing anything or accomplishing anything. We have this upside down notion in human services that the top of the heap is a goal satisfaction. You've completed or accomplished a goal, and all your efforts ought to be toward accomplishing that goal. For me, that's upside down. For me, the first goal you ought to have with a child, whether you're the parent or a teacher or whomever, and you have to circle back and reinforce and reinvent this constantly, is that your presence signals safety for the child. I can be relieved no matter what I do or what happens around me, this person will catch me. Remember your mission. We are here to catch you. I think the song I mentioned last time that just chokes me up. Why was there no one there to catch her when she fell? Well, all right, this is us catching them. I am safe. And the next thing ought to be, and we're going to have fun. I don't care if the task itself is onerous or not. We're going to make it fun. And it's my job. I will figure that out. And then last, we may actually get it done. But if in approaching getting it done, you interfere with it being fun or being safe, back away. And ask yourself, really, really, how important is it that this gets done? And it gets done now, let alone that it ever really gets done. Or should we be thinking about getting done with something else right now? All right, listening and trying to interpret, that goes back to the Other thing, over and over and over and over, people said to us, we just want to be heard. We just want someone to respect us. And that always came back to respect you. What does that mean? What does it look like? What do people do that looks respectful and feels respectful to you? It was always the same thing. They listen to me. Yeah, but you don't have any speech. They still listen to me. Was kind of the answer we got over and over. And the way that we confirm that we're listening and hearing is we give it back. And so learning to rephrase and restate, and then having the liberty of moving it back in a direction that is more desirable for you and for the child. Teaching the difference between being angry and acting aggressively. For example, it goes back to the starting point of, I can see you're mad, and that's all right. I get mad too. I get mad. I had somebody the other day, I was really, really angry about an exposure in our family of somebody who acted irresponsibly and then potentially exposed one of my grandchildren and potentially all three of my grandchildren. And I was unhappy about that as we were waiting for a COVID test to come back. And I sent a text in response to somebody that expressed some of my anger. And he just said, dude, you got to do something about that anger. And I texted back to him, I just did. I just expressed it in really graphic terms. And a little righteous anger being expressed is really good. I feel much better. I'm no less angry with that guy, but I feel better about it. So teaching children that it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hurt other people and stuff like that. But then we now start to teach the difference. Unfortunately, very often what we do is we inadvertently teach the kid that it's not okay to be upset, because they start to anticipate the punishment that's coming, and they skip right through their behavior to the consequence. And then that adds more fuel to already their emotional distress. Okay, looking for opportunities, again, to have fun with it, using humor, changing roles, and be alert to giving authentic and genuine praise. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Changing roles is just as simple as sometimes throwing up your hands and saying, I have no idea what to do with you. So why don't you tell me what to do with you? I literally used to put people behind my desk in my office, and I'd sit in the chair on the other side of it and say, your desk now, do what you wish. Can I push all the paper off it? Yes, you can. Can I put my feet? Yes, you can. You can do all those things. But remember, if you're making it your desk, you gotta be the guy with the answers. So what are we gonna do with you? And the way that breaks the ice over things is really pretty phenomenal. And then don't forget to ask the people around them, their peers. What do we do about this kid? I would clear the room of the teachers and the EAs, and I'd sit down and say, hey, I know nothing about school, because school was barely invented when I went. It was like they were still making rocks then. So I don't get school. Tell me why school isn't working for your classmate. And the kids will tell you all kinds of insightful things. It's phenomenal how much they know, and we don't think that they're very reliable or good reporters. I have learned to stop short of the next question as, what do you think we ought to do about that? Because then you get things like, well, if he takes my lunch again, I think we should cut his hand off. Well, that would solve that problem. That's creative. Let's think of something a little less, I don't know, bloody. You should try to shift gears. Okay, the next one is really, really critical. Being clear about what you want to happen instead of what you want to stop. Neurologically, our brains are programmed to envision or formulate a thought around the positive action before we can negate it. So here's one little experiment they did. They had a bunch of kids hang from a monkey bar or a tree branch or something, and they had some of the parents saying, hold on tight, you're doing great, you can do it, just a little longer, hold on, and those kids held on. They had another group of parents saying, don't let go, don't look down, don't do it. Those kids all fell, because they had to see letting go before they could see holding on. So tell your kids what you want. My sister Susie, who was an expert in parenting, she's the youngest of the six of us, And as we had children, she was an expert until she had 3 boys. And then she began apologizing to us. And she continues to this day. And her youngest is in his 30s and has a PhD and is a professor. And she's still apologizing to us for all the business she gave us. But one day when they were little guys and they were, they were whacking each other over the head with things, and they were being boys kind of thing. And Susie said, "Oh my God, look at this. It just goes in one ear and right out the other when I tell them, stop, don't do this. And I just said, no, it doesn't, Susie. It no longer goes in one ear anymore. You're not even talking to them. It's got nothing to do with them as far as they're concerned. Tell them what you want them to do, not what you want them to stop." And then, yes, sometimes that's a consequence. All right, you 3, you learn to play with this toy. Thank you, Michelle, or it's mine. Well, that changes things as opposed to saying, stop hitting your brother. Well, they're not going to stop doing that. But you can get them to start doing other things. What that then sets up is the moment that they show any inclination of doing what it is that you want them to do, then you can jump in and say, yay, there you go. I'm so proud of you. I'm so pleased. I'm so happy. All those kinds of things that make a child feel good, as opposed to the next intervention being, well, no, I said stop hitting your brother, but that didn't mean you could take a drill to him for crying out loud. You'll play behavioral tag until you tell them precisely what you want them to do. The other thing that sets up is also changing how we set up things like, if you clean your room, you can have a treat. Well, now we're in a power struggle over whether the room's going to get clean. I would do it just the opposite. And I don't, well, I do understand. I won't go into why I think this is so powerful. Instead, I would say something like, so you want some candy? Oh, yeah. Which one? Which candy? Come, let's go pick it out. Oh, all right, I want that little one right there. All right, great. It's yours as soon as your room is cleaned. It's entirely up to you when you get that candy. Now you have just made the power struggle over, will the child get the candy or not? And it's up to them. And even when they get old enough to understand, you have just swapped the semantics. Our daughter would tell us, all you're doing is flip-flopping the consequence, and I'd say, and your point is, as she's going kind of go along with what it is that I want her to do. It sets up that possibility. The next thing you get to do with that child is say, good job, as opposed to, no, not that either. Well, not that either. And now now I've had it with you. and now we're in really big trouble. Save no for the really big stuff. And I mean no by physically intervening, verbally intervening, anything that says no, interrupt, stop, save it for big stuff. Because if they hear it too much, it's like my sister Susie. It doesn't go in one ear anymore. It just right past them. If they don't hear it often, it has a profound impact. I can remember well, my wife, who's a much more sophisticated behaviorist than I am as a pediatric physical therapist, sort of allowing our children to wander a little bit closer to the street. And the moment they got close to the street, boom, there was mama on her hands and knees in front of them with the shoulder saying, this will never be all right. No, you do not go in the street. Well, it had a profound impact. It made an emotional imprint on those kids that it was like having an electronic fence. Dogs get close to it like, oh, no. Our kids, from that sort of time on, as a 1 or 2 trial thing, became averse almost to streets and would wait for us to hold our hand to cross streets. They would wait to ask it was okay. And to this day are pretty responsible about stopping and looking for traffic and all that sort of thing. And I think it was because they didn't hear no very often. They got redirected a lot to yes. And the no was things like, you're in danger, you're endangering somebody else. And then sometimes it's because I've had it and I need a break from you. Okay, unlikely sources, they're brothers and sisters, they're peers. Being honest about you, this is making me mad. That's okay to say to a child. I try to stop short of saying, you are making me mad, because that's more like a you as a person anger me, as opposed to, I try to be very specific. When you hurt your sister, that makes me mad. I get most upset when you don't listen. That's all right. Do that kind of stuff. Be very behaviorally specific, but show them you have feelings too. that run to, you know, frustration and anger and all that kind of stuff, and then be that model for them. When they're really rocking and rolling, not a time to counsel, teach. It's time to just stay quiet and just keep them safe, keep yourself safe, others safe, and then pick your moment of intervention when their arousal comes back down a little bit and they have a little bit more access to cortical function. And then the last one, which apparently is the one most impossible to do for all of us, is take care of yourself. You know, if you're not getting enough sleep and healthy food and exercise and adult socialization, and I can hear some of you sitting there and say, yeah, oh, that would be really nice, particularly in the age of COVID. I would like to just get out of the house for a minute or two, would be really nice. Then figure out ways of taking care of yourself in the house. But remember that that has to be on the menu, because if you don't put it on the schedule, it won't happen. If you don't block out that time that says, I get these next 5 minutes to myself, and no, you can't come in the bathroom right now. You have to do those kinds of things. Take care, and don't be afraid with each other, you know, to tag team. If you have a partner that's there and responsible for doing that. And the number of times my wife would just simply put her hand on my shoulder and say, let's try to remember who the adult is here. Particularly if Anna and I were going at it. I was like, do I really have to? Yeah, all right, I'll step back. Okay. Some practical kinds of things that I wanted to share with you today in setting up rewards. And the first one is simply a treasure chest. And remember that this is not about not behaving certain ways. This is behaving in ways we find desirable that are incompatible with the undesirable behavior. You can't be doing that at the same time you're doing this. And if you can do both at the same time, yeah, then it's more of a distracting behavior, and we ought to just try to redirect it, not call too much attention to it or its alternatives. But I've always wanted treasure chests to be layered, so that, for example, and so here's the official language about this. We're setting up a differential reinforcement program on a progressive scale. So on level 1, you have identified a number of behaviors that you wish to see the child observe or produce. And you're clear with the child, I want to see, you know, these things from you, and doing these things will get you access to the first box. And so in the first box can be very simple little things like a little note, you know, for a favor, or a piece of candy, or something, a little trinket, a little toy. Once you've earned X number of trips to the first box, and you can do this a bunch of different ways, depending on you and your child. You can say, when you've gone to the box 5 out of 7 days, or when you've gone to the box 5 times in a row, or whatever that is, you can set that up a number of different ways. You now get access to the next level, the next box, and you can put progressively more attractive things in here. We're a little heavy on the primary reinforcers here with the food and the candy and stuff, and you can get in trouble with those if you're not careful. So mixing them up with other little things, little toys, little favors, little a trip to the park on your call, head rubs, back rubs, and an extra book at night. All kinds of things that you can put in there that don't necessarily cost any money. They'll cost you some time and stuff like that. But then you keep predicting to the child how soon you believe that they'll get to that. And then, of course, then in the bottom is something that they really have to work kind of hard to get to that bottom one. And here we've got a trip to DQ, and it could be that. It could be lots and lots of different things. You can stay up an hour later. You can have an extra 30 minutes of Xbox, or you can, I mean, just all kinds of things to be creative with. And it actually becomes almost a game, in a sense, of the child trying to see how quickly they can get through the levels into the different boxes of the treasure chest, all the while engaging in really positive behavior. That the real power is you saying, I'm so proud of you. Look at you. You're acting so grown up today. When you did this, and then again, you're very specific about tying back to the desirable target behaviors. I don't spend a lot of time targeting the negative behavior with the child. I think that reinforces it. It leaves it on the menu. It really gets mom and dad's attention. There's something going on there. And kids learn this kind of intuitively really, really quickly. So that's one approach, is the treasure chest. Another thing that I used an awful lot was a modification of either Chutes and Ladders or Candyland. And instead of using the actual board, we would just set it up, and there would be desirable targets. When you've done this, when you've done this 3 times, when you've done this 5 times, da, 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 da. And this is for kids who are a little bit more sophisticated, maybe a little bit older. Oh yeah, now we're introducing consequences. When you do this, so guess what? We just went backwards a little ways. Thank you. We are now no longer having access to anything beyond level 1 or 2 in the treasure chest for the next week. We are not getting to, oh boy, what's up here in square 60? That's something pretty fabulous. Again, you keep the focus sort of on the game, the treasure chest, the game, and you take yourself out of the immediate line of fire of, I'm always telling you what to do and what not to do, and then I'm either praising you or punishing you. It's, let's look at the board. Let's look at, and then I've always got all the target things right there of what is it that I want to see, and when and how often and how many do I need for you to, and then let's take a look at the board. Let's review, where are we? What is it? What do you think the next thing is we can do together that's going to move us along the game or get us back over to the treasure chest? And that then becomes the focus. It's an artificial locus of attention for the child, so that they're not just there in your face saying, I hate you. You don't let me do anything. And then we're stuck saying, yeah, if your friends all jumped off a bridge with you. And then, you know, you get that child like me that would say, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, we did that last week. This is the bridge. And we all jumped off. So don't go there. All right. So those are just some practical things. And then the last thing that I have here for you is my menu. And as you'll see, almost everything starts with an M, except for one thing that I'll tell you about that doesn't, but I sort of use it anyway. And to be honest, I originally put this together thinking about, so when I'm at the end of my rope, and I really am having trouble figuring out the dynamics and the ecology for this child and the family, and I'm sure I'm missing a piece of fairly significant information. And just as an aside, very, very often that significant piece of information has been either ongoing or a singular event of trauma of some sort, or something within the family that is kind of buried as a family secret. But anyway, so when I at the end of my rope and I don't know quite what to do, and as I said, this was originally toward kids with autism, and I started thinking about, oh, wait a minute, this is the stuff that works for me when I'm at the end of my rope, and I think for everybody. So when you are at a loss, once I started to focus on this, we have never failed to find a handful of these that were really compelling for the child. So let me get to the first one that's not on there. That's I think it's an M upside down, which is water. Exposing, introducing, allowing access to. There is something about water for a lot of children. Playing with it, the turning on and turning off, and the control of that and the predictability of that. There's something special about it. And also for kids that are disorganized and their body is not necessarily their friend, and they feel out of sorts and they can't do things, or they have limitations or disabilities, being in water can be a remarkable, remarkable thing. I have a really, really good friend, long retired, but he's a master dive instructor. And now he and his son, who's also a master dive instructor, they take people with fairly severe disabilities, and they don't take them in the water. They take them in with scuba tanks, and they get them underwater, breathing underwater, and then having complete weightlessness. So your body can kind of do what you want it to do. Water, powerful, powerful thing for a lot. And then the next one on the top of my list, and it is the top of the list, is music. I have never failed to find a genre of music that doesn't really, really resonate with somebody in a calming way. And just to remind you, there is no other sensory experience that we can have, whether it's pain, well, it doesn't matter whether it's internally derived or externally derived. There is nothing in the world that excites and inhibits more parts of our brain than music. There are parts of our brain that are on fire when we listen to music that they can't even figure out a physical neural pathway back to our hearing. They have no idea why this part of our brain is so active during music. Music is powerful. I'm just going to tell you that. Experiment and don't be surprised with what you may find. And this is what I'll give you a head start on. The number of times that I have found young men who rock and roll and are disorganized and explosive who love opera. In particular, they like sopranos and mezzo sopranos. Those people can, do the Queen of the Night from is it Figaro, where she's up there, 3 octaves. There is something about that stuff that a lot of them just oh. Now, in the old days we used to go through a lot of little player, discmans and what, because they get mad or frustrated, boom, that gets broken. We figured out, ways of beefing them up and stuff like that. And now we've got digital, so we're less likely to have broken bits. Play with music. Okay, movement. Make sure there's big and little movement on a really frequent basis during the day. The number of people who are sedate and they go to school and they're expected to sit quietly all day, which is an impossibility whether you've got anything going on developmentally or not, especially for boys. We know this. But then we have people that over the course of their life, they just settle into not moving much. Make sure you've got movement. And if they can't move, have people move them. Bring in a physical therapist and have them teach you how to move this person. What are the ranges of their range of motion? What are the limits? And move them. And then make sure that they've got small movement stuff too. But big things where you're lifting and you're carrying stuff is good. Small stuff are manipulates, things that we do with our hands, even if it's just to hold them. We don't have to be making anything or creating anything. Sometimes we just need things for our hands to be busy. Find out who mom is. And it's not always mom. Sometimes it's dad. Sometimes it's a relative or a brother, sister, but find out who that signature person is in their life and then use them. Learn from them, refer to them, including, I'm going to have to talk to mom to see what about this. Oh, we know how powerful that is. We don't want mom to know this. kind of stuff. Mutts, animals have been powerful for some people, not always dogs. We've used rabbits, we've used horses, mostly dogs, rabbits, and horses. Have not had much success with kitties. They're a little less able to sort of shape into what we need them to be doing. Most successful for me has been really, really large, calm dogs. All right, I got to get through this in 3 minutes. All right, here we go. All right, Max. That's this business of always be predicting for your child. What's going on? What's coming next? Why it's coming next? And you are answering the why and the how come questions. You are laying out the roadmap of your expectations and you're weaving in the rewards that are going to come because of that. And so I would do things, and we're going to go to the grocery store, and this is how you're going to act. This is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to get for that. And then, implied. I didn't have to say. And if you do any of these things, and that's not, that's implied. You don't have to go there. But being clear about this is where we're going and why. Understanding what motivates your child, what gets them going, what really floats their boat, and use it. Hang it out there. Again, not in the, as soon as you pick up your toys, you can have this. It's, you can have this as soon as your toys are picked up. And then you don't ever go back to picking up toys. You scratch your head and say, I could have sworn you wanted that Snickers bar. Wow, was I wrong about that? Oh, yes, I did. Even I could have sworn you wanted the car this weekend. Huh, I was wrong. And then, things start happening very, 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 very quickly. But meditation. Children need quiet. They need calm. They need to be able to spend time by themselves, not just sleeping and stuff. They need to figure out what to do with themselves in quiet ways. And guess what? We have to teach them. And they're really amenable to learning. I have a 3-year-old grandson who now has probably 6 yoga poses that he can do pretty well. He's got good form on him, and he gets it. He gets why he has to do this. Sometimes when he's, bouncing off the walls, especially now, not being able to socialize with other little 3-year-old boys and being in the house. Our playgrounds are all cordoned off with, yellow boundary tape. You can't use the playground equipment and stuff. And we do have the little thing in the backyard, but as Nico tells me, he needs a bigger one that he can climb higher on. Teaching children to relax, I've taught children to breathe with me. I've used progressive relaxation, all kinds of things. Do it. Medication, judicious, careful, thoughtful, really carefully looked at use of medication sometimes can really be a boon, including the last one, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it's so fraught with all kind of drama and things. For example, in New Mexico, we have medical cannabis. We've had really nice success with it, with some people with seizure disorders, with really acute anxiety disorders, and people who are really, really disorganized with autism or some other neurological things. And yet the Department of Health, which administers the program, is not allowed to comment, guide, or assist families in doing this because we're federally funded. And so if we do, we lose our federal funding. So it's just this crazy dynamic of how do we do this? But we have found great success. All right. And the only one that I skipped over is not really masturbation. That's a sorry substitute for sexual intimacy, but it's as good as it gets for some people. So I'm just going to end with early in my career when Janet Halverson, a nurse, and I took it on upon ourselves to teach a bunch of young men how to successfully masturbate because they were not. They were not being successful and they were hurting themselves. They simply didn't know how to masturbate. So we started to teach them. And we used all kinds of props and things, and sexual interest, partners, release, intimacy. It's critical. We are born that way. And it doesn't go away because we have some sort of developmental issue. Understanding that and allowing for it and encouraging it would be the last piece that I would tell you. And then I put some resources in there for you. It's just stuff that has been really informative to me. I meant to go even see if these all exist because it's been a long time since I've been to them. And then the next thing you'll see is just a mess. What a lot of these things have to do with anything. It's because they inform me in ways about the human condition, human emotion, and human behavior more so than the next book on psychology. Reading a novel that is really profound and powerful has been much, much better teacher to me. And then looking far and wide of what works for everybody, whether it's international or interpersonal, what is that? I want to know about that. What sets the stage for change and what makes change happen? And I know now I'm over time, but I actually got through all the slides. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you in January.